Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following, and of course, watching the podcast on YouTube. Tucker will join me in a few minutes to talk about what was an outrageous night at Citizens Bank Park. And they all seem to be in October the last 2 years. As the Phillies win going away, they take a 2-1 lead in the series. Could close it out tonight against Spencer Strider. There's a lot of aspects of last night, but we got to start with the one that we'll be talking about years from now. And that, of course, is Bryce Harper, a 2-home run night. And we're at the point now with Bryce Harper where the surprising isn't surprising anymore, where the wow is now expected. This guy, the best way I could frame watching Bryce Harper's whole career, but specifically in Philadelphia, is he is built for this. It's almost like he was born for this. He talked last night after the game about how he doesn't really feel pressure. Pressure was when, at 11 years old, he decided he was going to be the number one pick in the draft and worked for that through his adolescent years to become the number one pick in the draft. Like this is all fun for him now, but you could see once in a while there's a player that is built uniquely for the moment, uniquely for October, uniquely for the city he plays in. It's all Bryce Harper right now. And was there any doubt in anyone's mind he was going to have a big night last night after what happened? And there's two aspects of it. And I still believe it was bad base running play in game 2. But he channeled that. Rob Thompson after the game talked about how he wanted to kind of atone for what happened at the end of game 2. But then there's the Orlando Arcia thing, which just adds an element to this that is just so fun. I mean, Arcia, who's a clown, by the way, gets quoted after the game. Maybe he didn't know he was being quoted, but I mean, he's a pro baseball player and has been for a while. Orlando Arcia is not a rookie. If there's reporters in the clubhouse and you're yelling and screaming stuff, it's fair game. Just because there's not a microphone in front of your face doesn't mean it's not fair game. So that gets out there. And then Bryce Harper channels all that stuff into a multi-home run performance, majestic shot. And ironically, just like last year, it was game 3 at home against Atlanta after a bad game 2 loss. The third inning is where the whole thing turns. Last year was the Hoskins bat slam. Last night it was Castellanos, followed by Bryce Harper with a 3-run shot. And from there, it was kind of curtains for the Atlanta Braves. But the numbers on Bryce Harper now have reached a point where we're talking all-time. We're talking all-time great in the postseason. First, in kind of the pantheon of October. And I know Babe Ruth's numbers and Lou Gehrig's numbers are off the charts. It was a different game back then. I always think when you think about baseball playoffs, it really doesn't start until the late 60s when they put the division series in. And it became the league championship series and division series came in the 90s, but at least there became rounds of playoffs late 60s. Before that, it was just the World Series. So obviously the leaderboard is going to be Ruth and Gehrig because the Yankees were in the World Series basically every year. But, from the time the playoffs, the quote unquote playoffs started in the late 60s to now, really there's two names that jump out. When you think October, you think Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, and you think the guy who came after that, and they called him Mr. Octubre up in Boston, David Ortiz. Those are the two guys who channeled the moment, who dominated the sport, who had the craziest numbers, who just kept getting big hit after big hit in October. Bryce Harper has now entered that pantheon. Now, he's got to get a ring. That's the final step of this to truly be with those guys. But when I think of postseason baseball, I think of Reggie Jackson, I think of David Ortiz, and now I think Bryce Harper. And the numbers are just ridiculous. So the list of players with a 1,000 OPS and as many home runs as Bryce Harper in the postseason, it's only him and Babe Ruth. That's it. Nobody else has a combination of as many home runs as Bryce Harper and an OPS of 1,000 or more. It's Babe Ruth and it's Bryce Harper. Like, just think about that for a second. It's Babe Ruth and it's Bryce Harper. Ruth and Harper are the only two that have as high of a slugging percentage and as many home runs. Those two, 14 home runs and a high of a slugging percentage. I believe Beltran actually was part of the first stat too. Beltran, Harper, and Babe Ruth. Beltran was a great October player. But Bryce Harper's in this category now, like this all-time October category when he gets to the plate. And then, of course, it's the impact. Since Bryce Harper got here to the Phillies, and this is obviously just the last 2 years, they're 8-0 in the playoffs when he hits a home run. I mean, you could kind of just draw a line right down the middle when a game starts. Will Bryce Harper homer today? Yes or no? Will the Phillies win today? Yes or no? And usually it's on that line. If he hits a home run, they win. If he doesn't, they really don't win. That has been October for the past couple of years. And luckily for everyone here, he's locked in again. as the Phillies try to go and win one more in this series and get to the LCS against Arizona, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The other part of last night, I feel like he's going to get lost today because it's a Bryce Harper day. It's an offense day. Castellanos had a couple home runs. Marsh got his back going. All that. Trey Turner's first home run in about a month. Great offensive night for the Phillies against the underbelly of the Braves pitching staff. The other element of last night was Aaron Nola, who I thought pitched very well. Now, he wasn't perfect. There were some base runners on. He allowed a run. He didn't get into the, past the six, but I have a comment on that and a theory on why Rob Thompson pulled him when he did. But 9 strikeouts and only 1 run allowed against that Braves offense, I will take that every single day. Nola's curveball was on point. The adjustment he made about a month ago now is clearly paid dividends. He has an ability to throw strikes with that curveball now, get swings and misses in and out of the zone. He wasn't doing that for a lot of the season before. Right now, when you look across baseball at the 5 teams left, are there many or any that you like their 1-2 with the way they're pitching right now better than the Phillies? I mean, maybe you like some just on the same level. You want to go to, let's say, Houston and say Verlander and Javier and Valdez. They're really good as a 1-2-3, but are they pitching better right now, or is it kind of the same level? I'd say the same level. Arizona has, and we'll see them next round, Gallen and Merrill Kelly. They're good. I think the Phillies guys are pitching better right now. You go to Texas with Evaldi and Jordan Montgomery. They're pitching well, and maybe they'll get Scherzer back, and that could, boost it up a notch. But I don't think they're pitching better than the Phillies guys. Like the way Wheeler is pitched in the postseason, and then you throw Aaron Nola in, it looks like last year. They got a 1, they've got a 2, and they've got Aaron Nola pitching again, once again, the way he did last year and the way he did for a lot of his Phillies career. And, I thought it was interesting last night. He gets the ovation as he walks to the field. He tips his cap. Second time he's done that now in a couple of weeks. Did it at the end of the regular season. It's kind of clear in his head, or at least it's clear to me, and it feels like it's coming from him, that he's acknowledging, and he's usually, he's a stoic guy. He hasn't acknowledged the crowd much in his career. He hasn't had a ton of great moments to acknowledge the crowd, but in his good moments, in his really good moments, in his good years, he's stoic. He doesn't give much to the crowd. He just kind of walks off the mound and does his thing. You could tell he's feeling it now because this may be the end for Aaron Nola. And at any point here, his next start could be his last in Philadelphia. Now, the Phillies are in a commanding position. We'll talk about game number 4 and potentially 5 in a couple minutes. But last night, potentially, depending on how tonight goes and how, if they need Saturday goes, could be his last start in Philadelphia or his next start. Like, he's feeling it right now. And if the Phillies are going to pull this off and they're going to go all the way and they're going to win this thing and be a team that loses the World Series and comes back and wins the next year, he's going to play a big, big role in all of this. And he's pitching really well right now. Look, I want to get to the Diamondbacks and game 4 and 5 of this series in a minute. But one thing, and then we'll get Tucker's thoughts on all this. It really strikes me as watching this Phillies team that there's a championship in that room. You feel it. They have the look. There's something about this team that a switch flipped last year and it carried over to this year. They believe, they play their best in big moments. There's something unique about them here in Philadelphia that they don't think they can be beaten. And when they get rolling, they're not a team that's flawed anymore. They're just as good as anybody, if not better than everybody left in baseball. And sometimes teams are built for the regular season. The Braves are that. The Dodgers are that. Sometimes teams are built for the postseason. And this team feels like 2 years in a row that is uniquely built for October. They get through the regular season. They kind of stumble their way through there sometimes. They're streaky. But when it's the money time, when it is October, especially here in Philadelphia, they're a different kind of team. They are the definition of a team that they're on the precipice of winning a championship. It's just about the details now and finishing this thing off. But, man, home field advantage is staring at them in the face in the next round if they could get there. We'll get to game 4 in a minute here. But let's get Tucker's thoughts on this Bryce Harper guy who just continues to do what I just feel like he was born to do this. Like, this is who he is. It feels like the moment is never too big because I think he's created these moments in his head probably since he was 7 years old.
Yeah, and it's just weird because it doesn't happen in baseball, right? You see it in other sports. You see it in basketball, maybe football if you're a quarterback or someone who, gets to touch the ball a lot. But in baseball, you're one of 9 in the lineup, right? And for him to continually get at bats in big situations like that, and for him to continually come through, I mean, it's like nothing we've ever seen before. I mean, truly, like, it just in baseball, it doesn't happen. Like, and not even just superstars, not even all-stars, whatever. Players don't come up in big moments like that on a consistent basis, and players don't come through as often as he does. Like, I texted you last night after he hit his home run, and didn't you just kind of expect it? Right? Like, didn't you just sit there and say, well, runners on third, first and third, runners on the corners, 2 outs in the third inning, probably going to hit a home run here. And he did. He took a curveball and launched it in the right field bleachers. And I don't know, a party just broke out. And the whole Harper Orlando Arcia thing, I think it's hilarious the way Braves players and fans are both whining about it. How yesterday it actually didn't happen. He never actually said it. And now today it's unfair that Bryce Harper heard it. It wasn't meant for his ears. He wasn't supposed to hear it. Travis d'Arnaud was complaining on the TV last night that he doesn't want to talk to the media ever again because they ruined the inner sanctity of the Braves locker room now by reporting things that players are saying. And it's almost a Michael Jordan thing. And I don't want to compare Bryce Harper to Michael Jordan. I think that may be a little far. But, I mean, the fact that a first baseman, he's usually a right fielder, but a first baseman is going after a shortstop and just punishing his pitcher as a result of just something he said off the cuff 48 hours earlier, it's just unbelievable. I mean, the stuff he does, I agree with you. He's a terrible base runner, but sometimes you just got to take the good with the bad. And right now, I mean, last year they made the World Series because of Bryce Harper. And this year, I think if they want to get back there, if they want to move on past the Braves and we'll see what they can do against Arizona if they get there, it's going to come down to what Bryce Harper does again. Like, this team goes as Bryce Harper takes them. And last night, and really since the start of the Braves series, he didn't do much against Miami, but he won them game 1 by scoring 2 of the 3 runs. He hit the home run. He scored the first run of the game. And last night he had 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. It's just, I don't know. You almost run out of words talking about him. And we can talk about Castellanos and Nola and everyone else with a home run, but the story of this team starts and ends with Bryce Harper.
It does. And whatever the bar has been for his career, he just continues to jump over it. I remember when he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 16 years old, baseball's LeBron. Like, how could he live up to that? Well, he's done it. I mean, he's actually exceeded expectations for the player he was supposed to be. And now in Philadelphia, to sign that contract, to be the guy tasked, and he chose this task, with turning a franchise that had been dormant for a decade around, he's done it. Every single time there's a bar, he just jumps over it. He is a special player. The Phillies have gotten every dollar of that contract back and more, because that's what this guy does. All right, quickly, let's look forward to game 4, and really why I think it is so important for the Phillies' chances to get to the World Series. They win this game. Obviously, again, to clinch is better than not to clinch. No one wants it to go back to Atlanta and play a deciding game 5 on the road. They would be underdogs in that game, even with Wheeler on the mound. All that being said, let's just say for a second the Phillies are going to beat the Braves. It's a matter of beat them in 4 or beat them in 5. It really sets them up if they win this tonight in game 4, because that allows them to pitch Zach Wheeler in game 1, Aaron Nola in game 2, the formula they used last year to get up on the Padres. They could do it. If not, if they have to go to Atlanta for game 5, and let's say they win that game, well, then we're talking about Taijuan Walker, Christopher Sanchez, someone of that ilk likely pitches game 1 Monday in Philadelphia against Arizona. And then you get Aaron Nola back for game 2. Wheeler, I was assumed for game 3 next Thursday in Arizona. And then, you probably have a situation where the first 5 games you don't get to see a Nola or a Wheeler again until game 6 is my point. So like you have the first 5 games, you only get those guys once each. So that means a lot of other moving parts to the rotation. Meanwhile, the Diamondbacks could set their rotation up for the NLCS. The Phillies last year, their pattern to get to the World Series had a lot of things that kind of fell in place for them. They clinched early. They beat the Cardinals in 2. They beat the Braves in 4. Allowed them to set the pitching up. They need that again to really give themselves an extra advantage going into the NLCS. And of course, the Spencer Strider thing. I can't wait to see how loud Citizens Bank Park is tonight. He doesn't like crowds. I mean, he was clear about it. Whether he was half kidding or not, he said it. And I expect tonight to be raucous. Look, it will be a challenge. He's a great pitcher. He's a strikeout machine. But the Phillies have an enormous advantage at home. And if they can't close that at home, they have one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball rested and ready for Saturday night in Atlanta. What a night it was for the Phillies. What a run it's been last year and this year. And what a player Bryce Harper is. Appreciate everyone listening, following, subscribing, and, of course, watching on YouTube here. Back tomorrow, hopefully, talking about the Phillies clinching a spot in the National League Championship Series right here on WIP Daily.